Hi, welcome to Bonds After Baby. I'm LMFT Evie Empress, and I'm here to help you and your family relationships experience more relief and connection during the stage of pregnancy, postpartum, and early parenthood. Remember to subscribe for my podcast here and on YouTube, and sign up to my email list on my website, bondsafterbaby.com, for free resources for your family. In this episode, I'm discussing drop-kicking shame, how shame and being hard on ourselves hurts us and our relationships. And I'm going to leave you with 4 actionable tips to notice and reduce shame spirals and self-attack as you adapt to early parenthood. This is a really big topic. Parents being harsh on themselves is one of the most prevalent means of suffering I see in my work. And also the primary way that I see people close off from one another in relationships. I'm going to continue to address this in many different episodes, but this is an intro into how shame and self-attack function and how it's a barrier to yourself and with others. Often moms or parents are caught off guard in the struggle. So when things get hard in pregnancy, postpartum, when we have young kids, it's like, what's going on with me, my relationship, my family? I remember with my first child when I was pregnant, my husband and I attended a midwife seminar preparing us for what to expect at birth. And this midwife had the wisdom and wealth of experience to make sure to warn us about the dramatic hormone drops after birth and how in these early months and even years, we couples would really need to support each other and stick together. And my husband and I just looked at each other and laughed. We thought we knew it all. And, we just had really enjoyed the pregnancy and things had been solid. And we just thought we were kind of untouchable, or our relationship was untouchable to the struggles ahead. And we were caught off guard with how much we had to figure out as a couple and how to support each other as we navigated this huge life change. I see this often with the moms and parents I work with, that there's either an expectation to adapt without our sense of selves being rocked this much or our relationships being rocked this much, or I see that it's just a continuation of a habit that they already have to be quite hard on themselves. In the hospital where I used to provide social support for new moms, there were these pictures of moms just in total bliss, throwing their babies up in the air, in glee. And the babies are smiling and the moms are smiling. And we'd ask the moms, like, is this what you were expecting? This and a little exhaustion? Well, it's usually more complex of an experience, okay? And even just hearing us normalize that things aren't just feel hard would reduce so much anxiety. Um, Unrealistic expectations of moms and families to bounce back and for relationships to adapt quickly are really, really unhelpful. It's okay to struggle. Um, and I'll probably mention this so much it's going to get annoying, but most of mankind were raising kids in big communities or tribes. In contemporary society, there's so much less support for parents with a lot more pressure. And I believe it actually would be odd if there weren't a struggle with the way things are. 1 in 5 moms report postpartum distress, anxiety, depression, or adjustment difficulties. But I and many of my postpartum or parenting therapist colleagues are convinced that this statistic is total BS. That's just what gets reported. There's not enough screening of moms, first of all, so there's not enough data. And even when there is, sometimes moms are ashamed of being honest in the screenings. So 20% is still a large enough number, but professionals have a hunch it's significantly more than that. And that is to say, you are not alone. We know from research that anxiety, depression, OCD, difficulty adjusting, sense of confidence as a parent can stem from relationship distress itself. And even if it's not, symptoms are definitely intensified or exacerbated by stressful relationship dynamics, by discord. And we know that there are so many factors in our environment and life phase that contribute to how we cope. I went over this in my second episode. And that learning curve of adapting is perfectly natural for individuals and families when babies come and little children. And when you're adapting to parenting in those initial years, whether it's your first or fourth. There are some dangerous societal and internal narratives around struggling. That there's something wrong with us if we struggle. That motherhood and family life is supposed to be natural and smooth. And often there's an idealization of the superhero mom, families that have it all together. So these narratives are especially cruel in the fragile transition to motherhood and parenthood when the stakes are high, right? These are our children, our families. While we feel the most vulnerable, there's so much being asked of us, so many demands. A colleague of mine described the period of motherhood as a time when everything gets touched. Such a lovely way to put it. Our childhood histories, our vulnerabilities, our hopes and longings, our sense of self, our bonds with others, it's all touched. And during this vulnerable time, both physically and emotionally, when there's a struggle and when we want the best for our kids, shame and self attack often hits. What's wrong with me? What's wrong with our family? I'm not doing enough. I'm not enough. But shame spirals and self attack don't help anything, they only hurt. Sometimes I hear from my clients that shame helps them stay accountable. No, this is a misconception. Actually, shame spirals make it harder to connect with ourselves, for things to change, and to connect with others when we need support or when something just we need to cope differently. So, I want to speak to the function of shame. In intensive short term dynamic psychotherapy, the conceptualization of shame is that it's not a feeling, but that it's a defense or avoidance against real feelings. And I found this consistently rings true with my clients, and I've seen it in my own life and relationships as well. So I'm going to give some examples of this. Let's say there's a mom who has a toddler, and the toddler has just started, screaming and all these tantrums. And whenever the mom is with her mom, the grandmother is like insulting her or the child with passive aggressive comments, or even just directly saying, boy, you really don't have a handle on this motherhood thing, or man, I think there's something wrong with your kid. And just being very, very critical and judgmental. So the feeling that the mom actually has is irritation and anger with her mother, and maybe grief that she doesn't have the support she needs, and love and frustration with her child. And there's so many feelings there, right? But instead of feeling them and letting those feelings be a compass for her to either have a talk with her mom, put some boundaries with her mom, have some compassion for herself and say, okay, it's normal to have these feelings and I need to get some help and look for some resources on a local moms group or go to a support group or just read up on how to deal with tantrums. Instead of that, right, when all those feelings just stay smushed, it just turns into self attack, right? Instead of feeling the irritation with her mother, instead of feeling the compassion towards herself, it it just gets buried, and then the self attack just gets her in like a shame spiral. And shame spirals and self attack just make her feel worse. And as she feels worse, she's actually going to have less ability or space to cope with what she needs to cope with in her relationship with her child, and methods with her child and tantrums, or her own emotional regulation, and then communicating with her mother. So this is just one little example, a little vignette of how self-attack is actually just really counterproductive. Another personal example, even though I'm a therapist and this is my specialty and this is what I do and I know better, um, I in my with my second child, I struggled with breastfeeding past 6 months. With my first child, I breastfed long term and I really, really enjoyed it. And I was looking forward to enjoying it a second time. And this is going to be our last child, so I was really looking forward to just one more experience of this. Um, and I had so much grief about not getting to enjoy this kind of long-term feeding relationship that I was looking forward to, the whole pregnancy. um, I didn't want to feel the grief. I was avoiding it. And so I just kept self-attacking constantly and being hard on myself that I didn't do this and I should have done it. I should have found a way. And that was just logically not true and not kind to me. But I just kept wanting to avoid the grief. Once I felt the grief and I just let myself feel it, I was able to stop shaming and self-attacking myself. Um, and I do want to give a caveat because I know this is a touchy issue for moms. I'm certainly not saying that breastfeeding is the only way or the right way to feed at all. I'm just saying this was something that I enjoyed and was looking forward to. Okay. Um, Shame can also be an automatic response from childhood. So the idea that if I'm struggling, something must be wrong with me. And then that can become an unfair narrative that just continues until adulthood. So, for example, in childhood, if your parent was uncomfortable with your big feelings or struggles, or if you were angry at your parents, and they were not welcoming towards those feelings, and you were not permitted to express anger or irritation or to identify responsibility in anyone else. You might have heard things like, you should just be grateful, I don't want to hear it. You might have just seen your parents shutting down, or maybe you never even brought up anything because you knew your parent would not tolerate any kind of communication like that. Those are the kind of interactions that may lead to the kind of narrative of something's wrong with me. I may be upset with someone else, or I may have needs from someone else as I struggle, but the problem is with me. Okay. So when we're struggling and we'd like relief, again, self-attack and shame spirals are not going to be helpful. They don't help us be more accountable to our kids or loved ones, and they block us from connecting with our own needs and our self-compassion. This then, so we can get into relationships, also blocks us from letting others into our pain or joining others to help work something out together, right? So when we're experiencing struggles, don't we want to be able to join with someone else, either for comfort or to help make a plan or just to be seen or just to help have someone help us calm, okay? Um, One more example. So let's say an exhausted mom is up all night and ends up yelling at her baby or child, right? And then the child cries because the mom yelled. So mom feels love towards her child as well as irritation after being up all night towards the child. And because of the intense love, she also feels guilt for yelling at the child. Okay. That's different from shame, just guilt. Like we feel guilt if we, do something to someone that, we feel badly for doing. It's okay. So let's say mom has this guilt, love, irritation, and also feels anger towards her partner for not helping more at night as her partner had promised. And mom feels grief for how hard the experience of parenting has been in the past months. These are so many big feelings, right? The love, irritation, guilt, grief, okay, anger, towards various people, okay? And then it gets buried in a ball of anxiety and comes out as self-attack, right? So let's say mom's not even aware all these feelings are coming up, but the self-attack comes pretty quickly. I'm a bad mom, the child deserves a better parent, if only I were more of a natural at this, et cetera, et cetera. So if these self-attack thoughts and this shame spiral is coming in, does that leave mom more inclined towards soothing herself to be more regulated for herself and her child? Does it help her be more or less inclined towards being present with herself, more or less inclined towards opening up with needs that she may have from others? Okay. So it's going to be, she's going to be less inclined. She's just going to be feeling badly. And it kind of puts you in this isolated island to yourself when that happens. It doesn't actually help have things improve for yourself or to connect with others. Okay. Compassion and facing reality and your feelings about reality are strong counteracts to these kind of shame spirals. A love for yourself and being able to feel your full range of feelings towards others as well. Compassion helps with being accountable and helps us make a plan to cope differently, to approach things differently. Can we simply be present with what's happening and observe our ways of coping? Can we have compassion for the many factors that make things so hard in this phase of life? I read once in a John Kabat-Zinn book to speak to ourselves the way our moms would speak to us. But I like to shift this towards how about we speak to ourselves the way we would speak to our own children? There's so many people whose moms did not speak to them in nurturing ways and compassionate ways. And so, as we mothers are in a stage of nurturing our children, what a beautiful opportunity to nurture ourselves and give the grace that we also deserve. There's enough grace to go around, and giving it to ourselves is powerful. I know that isn't always easy, and I'll be going in more depth on breaking through barriers to give yourself more grace in future podcasts. For now, I'll share some actionable tips to start normalizing the struggle in this stage of life and curb the unhelpful shame and self attack. Clarity and understanding can definitely help reduce some of the anxiety. So, the first tip is catch and observe. Catch the moments when you're hard on yourself and take a bird's eye view and just observe what's happening. Can you try to observe the actual feelings that are coming up under those self attack thoughts? Often, when we self attack, it's patterns of how others talk to us or expected us to see ourselves as bad. Since we know that's not helpful, are there any other feelings getting hidden? Grief or anger towards others, love, guilt? Just observe. Okay. 2. In moments of self attack, identify and drop kick unrealistic expectations and give yourself the same grace you'd give your own child. For example, if you're being hard on yourself for serving spaghetti the third time this week and being like irritable during dinner time, maybe say, who cares about the spaghetti? If we're not stressing about dinner, we might have some more space to bring a bit more joy or warmth during mealtime with the family. Notice how it's easier to connect with others or give grace to others when you give it to yourself. 3. If you can, express an emotion or logistical need you have with someone. Like if there's a moment where you notice a self attack on you, is that blocking maybe like some kind of protest or irritation about not getting a need met from someone else? This is really common. Try to get out of the tendency to go inward and solitary and maybe just share the need or longing you have with that person. If that's too much for now, you could just let someone in your life know how hard it is to let people in. And that can be the start of something, a conversation. 4. Share with your partner, fellow mom, friend, either struggles you've been having to receive some compassion, or maybe just how you've been resourceful overcoming stressors. Notice your strengths too, right? And you can let someone into the struggles or the strengths or both. And you can share this kind of compassion with your child, partner, fellow moms who you see may be also struggling. I hope this is helpful. And again, I'll be creating many more episodes in the future about counteracting self attack and shame spirals. If you want all the resources at your fingertips, I'll be offering freebie goodies in the near future. Sign up for my email list at bondsafterbaby.com to get the goods. And subscribe to my podcast and YouTube channel, Bonds After Baby, so you get notified when there's a new episode. I'm here for you and your family. Goodbye.